Super Mario, the plumber from Brooklyn who somehow has all kinds of fantastical adventures through numerous magical worlds. There's really only one explanation as to how a regular old guy like Mario could have such wild experiences, and that explanation is drugs. What drugs, you ask? Well, only the very hallucinogenic fungus that's at the core of Mario's power in all these adventures. That's right, kids. Every Mario game you've played is one big mushroom trip. And with studies done on psychedelic mushrooms having concluded that many adult test subjects rated their experience with them very favorably, we can probably safely assume that Mario falls among that group, hence the repeated usage. But many of Mario's experiences have been vastly different, presumably because of the different situations he's been in when he's decided to partake in the psychedelic mushrooms. It's also pretty clear that in some cases, he's gone a bit heavier on the dosage than others. So today, we are ranking Super Mario's top 10 mushroom trips. Also, don't do drugs. Drugs are bad. You always remember your first. The first time you felt bigger and more powerful. The first time you thought you could shoot fire from your hands. The first time your personal enemies suddenly appeared to be small, brown, and mushroom-shaped. And of course, that mushroom-shaped douche continually telling you that you battled all the way through that castle for nothing. Certainly not the most wild of trips in comparison to what came later on down the road, but it certainly sets the stage for what was to come. What probably actually happened in Super Mario Sunshine is that Mario and his friends were indeed off on some kind of tropical vacation for this mushroom trip when Mario did something that was environmentally negligent, got called out by the locals, and spent the rest of his trip being overly environmentally conscious in order to make up for what he did earlier, essentially blaming that slip-up on a darker version of his prior self. In other words, Mario popped some shrooms and went on a major cleaning binge around the resort, spraying off every bit of dirt he saw, mainly because to him, that shit was all colorful and glowing. This one is pretty simple. Mario got lit, did some artwork, and composed some music. Oh, and apparently had a fly problem at his place at the time. Tripping balls so hard you feel like you're flying through space. Cliché? Yeah, sure, a little bit. No doubt that countless others before him have taken their own wild journey through space while booming. But to Mario's credit, there probably haven't been many ever who turned into a bee or human spring along the way like he did. So Mario obviously was doing something right when he took his mushroom journey throughout the universe. He even managed to make it back to this same kind of trip a second time, which has been a rarity in Mario's days. Lots of art over time has been inspired by and both deeply interpreted and appreciated by viewers while under the influence of certain substances. Only one person that we know of, though, has ever fully believed themselves to be jumping into the actual paintings hanging in somebody's mansion and experiencing entire worlds contained within. Fighting giant stone blocks, racing giant penguins, and a carpet ride on a rainbow? Yeah, this was one hell of a trip. Mario, like many of us, was apparently stoked as hell on the Final Fantasy series and Squaresoft in general during the early to mid-90s. So much so that he tripped balls enough to believe he was actually participating in his own wild version of such a game, complete with aspects from previous mushroom trips making up most of the items within this adventure. Throw in a kid's toy that comes to life, a cloud child who thinks he's a tadpole, and a killer wedding cake, and you've got one hell of a trip. Seriously, the things Mario will do for cake? Talk about the perfect trap. Catsuits to climb walls, cannonball shooting helmets, and duplicating himself with the power of a cherry? Yeah, that's just a few of the crazy things going on here in what is essentially the cream of the crop among Mario's three-dimensional mushroom trips. Blending in old favorites that Mario obviously believes to be staples of his mushroom trips, along with plenty of inventive new aspects, all taking place within a world just as creative and colorful as his other biggest trips, and you've got an all-around great time with quite the wealth of complexity. Ugh, that time Mario made everyone hate him. What probably really happened here is that Mario tripped out way too hard, leaving his friends to have to take care of him. Wigged out Mario visualized his friends in this instance as Yoshis, and even though they did him a massive favor by putting up with all his shit just to try to get him home safe, he was still a whiny bitch about the whole thing. Here's where Mario, still relatively early in his experimental days, really took his dabbling in mushrooms to the next level. Believing himself to be taking the form of a raccoon that could somehow fly, a hammer brother like the ones he'd battled in a previous trip, a cloud, a freaking human frog, and a tanuki, which to him was just the same as being a raccoon, only with the ability to turn into a statue. Obviously. Journeying to vastly different worlds, taking on so many different forms, and for the first time imagining his main adversary actually had evil children as well? Yeah, this was just about the most balls out trip he ever had. Just about. You probably didn't see this one coming, but just by taking a quick look at this all, you realize just how absurd it is by analyzing the different zones in this insane world. Or land, I guess, since we're on a handheld. One zone is entirely a giant tree, and another is a giant Halloween-themed pumpkin. In one, you have to somehow warp up to space through a giant hippo, and another shrinks Mario down to a tiny size to battle a mouse with a lit fuse for a tail. One entire zone even takes place inside of a turtle, of which the final stage of the zone takes place inside a whale inside this turtle, because turtles are bigger than whales in this mushroom trip. And of course, there's the zone where Mario goes full meta in Mario Zone, where he battles through himself. And who would the final boss be of Mario Zone? Well, obviously, it is none other than the Three Little Pigs. Seriously, I'm not making this shit up. The core of Mario's own inner demons are apparently the Three Little Pigs. All of this then leads up to Mario fighting to regain control of his castle from Wario. Because in this trip of his, Mario, a plumber from Brooklyn, has a castle at the core of these 6 insane areas. The insanity of this world, the completely off-the-wall nature of all the enemies within it, and the complete deviation from everything else consistent with Mario's mushroom trips sets this one so far apart and on another level from all the others. And this was undoubtedly the hardest that Mario has ever tripped balls. So that's it for my list of Mario's top 10 mushroom trips. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and feel free to share it with someone else. They might enjoy it too. And remember kids, as always, don't do drugs. Drugs are bad. Thanks for watching everybody.